we're now moving on to chapter 26 in our module on negotiable instruments. And this one has the famous holder in due course and defenses to holder in due course. Again, these are easy concepts to incorporate in a multiple choice test. So I call your attention to this subject in particular. And again, if you're taking the ETS exam or something like that, you're certainly going to, well, not certainly, but you very likely may encounter a holder in due course claim. So billions of checks are processed every year, and fraudulent checks are making a comeback. I've included in your documents for Module 5 a sample of a cashier's check that was actually received by a friend of mine, and I saw her receive it. She stacked it, she had it, just had it in her possession. And I asked her what the story was on this cashier's check. It had her name. It was payable to her. I blanked that out on the check because I got it from her. And how I got it from her, again, as I saw this thing in her stack of mail, and I said, hey, were you expecting a check for, you know, the amount of money that the check is made payable to? And she said, no. And the reference line had a person's name on it. I said, do you know this person? She said, no. And I said, well, it's a fraudulent check. And she said to me, well, how do I know it's a fraudulent check? It looks like, you know, it's a cashier's check, and it's my name's on it. I should be able to deposit it. Well, the problem with this fraudulent check is, and I still haven't figured out how the party that created this fraudulent check, which looks very much like a real cashier's check, was able to make this check, how they make money. So perhaps one of the things is that the codes at the bottom may have not been the same in it. So it may have gone to a different bank account or something like that, even at the same bank. So it's very hard for me to figure out in the specific circumstances how that check would have been benefited the fraudster, so to speak. And what would happen, though, almost like a dirty trick, if my friend had deposited the check, it would have bounced sky high, and she would have lost at least a $30 fee. Plus, if she'd written any checks against the balance on, you know, the amount of money, then she might have bounced other checks. So fortunately, I did intercept the check. As you will see in the material I provided in Module 5, I sent the cashier's check, a copy of it, to the credit union, and the credit union's fraud representative did confirm for me that it was a bogus check. We still, again, don't know how they might have made out on it, but there are ways that this happens. There are a lot of companies that are selling, you know, opportunities to borrow money and all that send you fake checks and stuff like that. Say, oh, this is not really good for anything, but if you apply for a loan, you might get a real check that looks like this. So the assignee, the instrument being transferred, does not satisfy the elements of being negotiable, or it is negotiable. If it's not negotiable, you may be able to transfer it, but the other side is still going to have to hold it and do something to make it negotiable. Whereas if it's a negotiable instrument, it's ready to rock and roll. But the circumstance is, suppose you don't want to pay it, you have what are called defenses. So we're going to look at that next. So the holder is anybody that's simply holding the instrument. And the position is equivalent to that of an assignee. Any defenses available to the original parties may be asserted against the holder. Now let's move ourselves up to holder in due course. This is an extremely important slide. Again, HTC, even though it's fading because of the reduction in paper money moving, is still an extremely important concept. Holder in due course. third party possesses a negotiable instrument and takes it for value in good faith and without notice of defenses. This is one of the most important cliches in business law. HDC takes it for value in good faith and without notice of defenses. Status exists only where the defense to the instrument is a personal defense. This is, again, this concept is so important that within a couple slides they repeat it. This is probably the slide that I would put in my set of exam review slides. Requirements of holder in due course. For value, in good faith, without notice that it is overdue, that it has been dishonored, or that any other person has a claim or defense against it. These are your HDC standards. Very important. So value is something that is relevant, does not have to be dollar for dollar, but it needs to be reasonable. Here's a good example of this. I have a check for $100. And I go to you and I say, hey, I'm on the way out of town. Would you give me $80 for it, and then I'll endorse it to you and you can deposit it in your account tomorrow, but I've got to leave town today and I need some cash in a hurry. So in that case, 80 is reasonably close to 100. It's probably okay. Now, on the other hand, I have a $100 check and I go to you and I say, if you'll give me $5, I'll give you this $100 check. That is almost a per se admission that the check is worthless if somebody offers it to you. So if you're given the check and it's sold to you for such a pittance of money, then at that point, most likely you are on notice that it's bad and you won't be able to be an HDC because you didn't give real value. Honesty and fact is good faith. Now, when we say without notice, some of this is fairly basic stuff. The check does not look like it's been run through a paper shredder. It doesn't have tape on it. It doesn't have messy stuff marked on it. It is a clean, normal-looking check, and it's properly filled in and endorsed and so forth. So you have to have actual knowledge if you're on the receiving end of this situation as a holder in due course. And but there are things that could put you on notice, and this is reason to know that there might be a reason. And this could be something like this says the note says it's payable June 1. Well, today is June 10th. It's 9 days past due. So, excuse me. So what we want you to think about is 9 days past due. You are on notice that there might be something hinky with this check. You can't be an HDC. Now, taking the note before it's overdue is pretty simple, folks. This is pretty straightforward. So purchase demand paper cannot be holders in due course. They have reason to know they are taking it after demand has been made. So if demand is made and turned down, you can't be a holder in due course. Something's wrong. And if it's demand paper, more than a reasonable length of time has passed. So in other words, it's good as soon as you receive it. For some reason, it's 3-4 months later. It's like, well, sounds to me like somebody was waiting for somebody to come up with the money in order to pay it. So if you're in that situation, you're not going to be a holder in due course. So this is kind of, I don't expect you to memorize this type of information, but to develop a feeling about what being a holder in due course really means. The point of this slide is that an HDC can create additional HDCs. Each person in the chain who takes for value in good faith without notice of a problem can be an HDC. So you can have them in series. A holder in due course takes commercial paper free from personal defenses. All transferees, including holder in due course, are subject to real defenses. Now, these are important concepts: personal defenses versus real defenses. And this is where I wanted to get to. This is, other than the slide we showed you a minute ago that gives you the bold definition of a holder in due course, this is the other key slide from this chapter, and this is personal defenses versus real defenses. For any holder, personal defenses and real defenses. For holders in due course, only real defenses can be used against them to avoid paying the financial instrument that you have in hand. Personal defenses, holders. Real defenses against holders in due course and holders. So this is the legal distinction between the two, between a holder and an HDC. Now, you say, Dr. Schein, I really don't want to memorize these two lists. Well, I'm not asking you to memorize the list, but what I want you to do is, as preparing for your next, the next quiz will be the midterm exam, if you're working through things here, is to spend enough time with this slide, S16, that you are comfortable with picking these out. So if I covered up the screen and said real defenses versus personal defenses, and I gave you an example that you could say, yeah, that's a real defense. So let's reason together for a minute. So personal defense is, I didn't get anything for the note, is non-performance of a condition precedent, slight duress. The real defenses, unauthorized signature, it's a forgery. It's never going to be a good check. Material alteration, it's a forgery, or the check's been up. Somebody took a $100 check, made it look like a $1,000 check. That's a material alteration. That check is never going to fly. Infancy, lack of capacity, and so forth. So it's important that you understand the context of real defenses versus personal defenses, but I'm not asking you to memorize this entire slide, but to spend some time and to focus on the meaning of the slide. Now, in the Cato case, one of the things here that I just wanted to point out quickly is that the note was paid in full. One of the things is that what we do generally in the United States is we don't pay a note unless we get the note. We say, you've got an IOU, I've got money. Hand me that IOU, I'm going to hand you the money. Generally speaking, we're not going to give them the money unless we get the note back. Lost the note, tough luck. You better go find a replacement. You better find documentation. You better look real hard to find that, because if you can't, we're not going to pay you. And so this is a pretty an interesting situation. But again, if the note's been paid, it's been paid, but it shouldn't be still floating around in those circumstances. Now, there are exceptions to holder in due course. We're talking about an important one, largely consumer protection. So the Uniform Consumer Credit Code gives maximum protection to the consumer by allowing him or her to assert all claims and defenses against the assignee of any paper that has been signed. I want to run this by you in a little bit more clear view. You may remember I've talked about the Texas Deceptive Trade Practices Act, the Texas DTPA, designed to protect consumers from unscrupulous business activities. And so one of the things that happens here is that if you have received paper under certain circumstances or negotiated paper, and you have not received the value of your bargain, the other side cannot assert that they're a holder in due course. And let me give you a very straightforward example. So you go to one of these furniture stores that does a lot of advertising on television or radio, and you buy a suite of furniture. And it says they're going to give you a note. The note has a very tiny interest rate, and that it's going to be good for 3 years, and don't worry about it. You know, you'll have tons of money down the road or whatever. But in any event, what happens is that the item that you gave, the furniture that you gave the note for, turns out to be garbage. You get it to your house, the bed collapses under you some night, the dresser drawers fall apart in the dresser. It's just a terrible mess. So you go to you don't make your payments. So the consumer credit company that wrote the finance document comes to you and says, hey, you owe us the money and you haven't paid us. So we want our money, and we want overdue charges, we want interest, etc. But what happens in that circumstance, folks, is that what is important to understand about the way this works is that a personal defense is lack of consideration, remember from the previous slide. So it's a personal defense to say, I didn't get the money, the benefit of the bargain. I got crap instead of good furniture. So you're allowed, against a consumer situation like that, to go forward and to say, no, I did not get what I was supposed to get. I didn't get the benefit of the bargain. And so this is where that's important, because it prevents the leasing company or the third-party finance company from making a claim on them without the other side having the defense of saying, we didn't get our full consideration. We got defective furniture, and we are going to assert that against you, even though you're the assignee of the party that actually sold us the furniture. So this is a very important consumer protection. So carrying that a step further, the Federal Trade Commission prohibits the use of HDC, holder in due course, against consumers and credit transactions, and I just explained why that is. Now, there is another exception to HDC that works in the opposite direction, is if you are related to the party that originally prepared the document, you are assumed to have a notice of the validity of the document. So you cannot become an HDC because you're really the person that prepared the document.